Hey guys, it's your weather girly Shania, and welcome to my podcast, Shania Beyond the Sky, where I explore and discover all things meteorology and earth science. Today is Weather Wednesdays, and we are going to take a look at what is weather and the hydrological cycle. So, right off the bat, guys, weather is basically the mix of events that happens in our atmosphere every day. So, weather is ever changing, it doesn't stay the same for too long. 1 minute it could be bright and sunny, and then half an hour later, breeze blowing as if rain were to fall. So, according to this definition here, weather refers to, as I said, the mix of events that happen each day in the atmosphere. Factors such as temperature, humidity, wind, air pressure, and precipitation are all elements that make up what weather is. Examples of weather in real life is rain, extreme hot sun, a sunny day with light breeze, sunny hazy conditions, and thunderstorms. It changes all the time. And because we are in the Caribbean, we don't experience snow and those other weather conditions. So it's very limited. Now, if you didn't know, meteorology is the scientific study of atmosphere and weather patterns. So, meteorologists use data from satellites, weather stations, and radar systems to analyze and predict weather conditions every day and over time. Their work is essential for daily forecasts and severe weather warnings and understanding climate trends. So, meteorologists develop local or regional weather forecasts, including predictions for several days in the future. And another thing that interacts with weather is air pressure. Air pressure goes hand in hand with weather. Weather is controlled by changes in air pressure, and air pressure is caused by the weight of the number of air molecules that make up the atmosphere. High pressure systems are usually when we experience hot sun, dry hot sun. You know, those days when it doesn't even have a single cloud in the sky. That is high pressure conditions. And high pressure conditions causes air to flow down and fan out when it gets near the ground, preventing clouds from forming. And on the other hand, low pressure systems is when we experience rain and cloudy weather, humid weather. Air flows together and then upward, where it converges, rising, cooling, and forming clouds. These clouds usually result in precipitation, so look out for rain or whatever weather your climate produces. Another very important topic that involves weather is the hydrological cycle. In order for you to understand how weather really takes place, you need to understand the hydrological cycle. This is basically the continuous circulation of water in the Earth's atmosphere. It is the process of which water moves from the ground to the sky and back to the ground. And these processes are evaporation, transpiration, condensation, and precipitation and runoff. I am sure that you are aware of some of the processes that I just mentioned, like evaporation and condensation, and you will never believe, or maybe you do, that this actually happens every day. And I will give you some life examples. So, most of us know for evaporation, most of us know what it is, but basically, it is the transformation of state in a substance from liquid to gas form. In meteorology, this liquid will be water. So, in order for evaporation to take place, there must be some sort of energy. So, this can be from the sun, earth, or objects on earth. When rain now fall, right, and vapor or smoke rising from the ground, like when rain now fall and you see vapor, or like a smoke rising from the ground, that is evaporation. Another example is when you're boiling water and steam or smoke coming out from the pot. That is evaporation. when evaporation takes place, there's a lot of humidity. You'll most likely feel warm, and steam is another form of humidity. You realize when something is steaming is you put your hand over it, you pull it back, and it gets almost wet. Yeah, humidity. The atmosphere will feel hot and wet. So number two, transpiration. I don't know how many of y'all are very familiar with this term, but basically, in very simple words, it's evaporation through plants. In most plants, transpiration is passive. It's a passive process, largely controlled by humidity of the atmosphere and moisture content in the soil. So 99% of the water from the transpiration process is circulated back through the atmosphere, and 1% is actually used for the plant growth. And you would think plant needs so much water, but really and truly it goes back to the earth. That's why plants are so great for the earth. And whenever there are plants and trees around, the place is generally cooler. Number three, condensation. So this is when water vapor is changed into a liquid state in the atmosphere. So condensation may appear as clouds or dew. So clouds, you know what clouds are. And dew is like the wetness that you see on plants in the morning, or let's say your window or your car. That's dew. It bright and early in the morning, sometimes your windshield or your car windows be wet. That's dew. I'll give you an example of another form of condensation. You know when you put cold water in a bottle and you leave it out, and the water builds up outside of the bottle, that is condensation. So it's the same thing as if you put the water in the fridge and then you take it out and you leave it out for a while, and the outside of the bottle comes wet. That's condensation as well. Also, I know you guys are going to hear a difference in the audio, but that's basically because I was recording and my mic was not on. My bad. So, and also, I am sounding a little bit stuffy today because I am sick. So, please bear with me. So, where were we? Yes, condensation. So, another example of condensation that happens in everyday life, apart from condensation in the sky, is when you leave a bottle of water, a half empty, half full bottle of water in a car, and you know when you when you reach the car and then you see the bottle, the water droplets collected at the top of the bottle, the top dry part of the bottle, that is also condensation. And another way that this also resembles the hydrological cycle is that eventually, when the water collects at the top of the bottle and it gets too heavy, it will start to drip back down. And that's an example of how precipitation works. There is a lot of real life examples of condensation, and it is just all around us. So, condensation deals with two temperatures, the air temperature and the dew point temperature. So the dew point temperature is the temperature dew can form. It is the point at which air is saturated and cannot hold water vapor anymore. And any additional cooling causes water vapor to condense. Foggy conditions often occur when the air temperature and the dew point temperature are at the same point. Condensation is basically the opposite of evaporation. Since water vapor has a higher energy level than liquid water, when this occurs, the excess energy in the form of heat is released, and this release of heat aids in the formation of hurricanes. Bet you didn't know that. The fourth process in the hydrological cycle is precipitation. And precipitation is resulted when tiny condensation particles through collision and coalescence grow too large for the rising air to support and thus fall onto the earth. Precipitation can be in the form of rain, hail, snow, or sleet, and is the primary way that we receive fresh water on Earth. So basically, without the big words, precipitation is when all those particles rise to the air and they collect, and in the clouds they become too heavy to hold each other, and then it just falls down. So that's precipitation is any form of water that falls back onto it. And that's the simplest way I can put it for you. And I gave you the examples there for you: rain, hail, snow, or sleet. And sleet is basically frozen water droplets, like frozen rain, but it's not snow. Snow is crystallized rain. Not crystallized rain. Snow is crystallized water. And sleet is frozen rain. And hail is balls of frozen water that drops from the sky. And we all know what rain is: regular water that drops from the sky. Finally, we have runoff. And this is basically when all the water is collected on Earth and it can't be absorbed by the soil anymore. So it runs off into the seas and the oceans and the rivers, and it collects back into the uh, larger masses of water. And then the hydrological cycle starts over again from evaporation over the sea, and then it condenses and causes, after too much condensation causes precipitation, and then after precipitation runoff. So that's the cycle there for you. A more clear definition of runoff would be that runoff occurs when there is excessive precipitation and the ground is saturated or cannot absorb any more water. Rivers and lakes are results of runoff. Some runoff evaporates into the atmosphere, but most water in rivers and lakes returns to the ocean. If runoff water flows into a lake only with no outlet for water to flow out, then evaporation is the only means of water to return to the atmosphere. As water evaporates, impurities or salts are left behind. As a result, the lake becomes salty, as in the case of Great Salt Lake in Utah or Dead Sea in Israel. Evaporation is evaporation of this runoff into the atmosphere begins the hydrological cycle over again. Some of the water percolates into the soil and into groundwater only to be drawn into plants for transpiration to take place. So, to conclude, as we are coming to the end of this podcast, weather basically differs day to day. And I know I said that in the beginning, but just to remind you that it's very different from climate, which we will take up on explaining in another episode. But for now, weather refers to the mix of events that happens in our atmosphere on a daily basis. And meteorologist is the scientist that specialized in the field of weather studies. The hydrological cycle refers to the way that water is circulated in our atmosphere through evaporation, condensation, transpiration, precipitation, and runoff. Well, that's a wrap for this podcast today. Stay tuned for next week's Weather Wednesday episode. And look out for more daily weather updates every single day on my Instagram. Follow Shania Beyond the Sky _ and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe so that you can be a part of this little community.